up on the county line, remember the attacks of 9/11.
We also have an update on the Jordan Brown case.
Westminster is experiencing even more construction. All this and more coming up on tonight's edition of the County Line. Good evening and welcome to this year's first episode of the County Line. I'm Hannah Puchkuski.
And I'm Drew Trifolis. This month marks the 10-year anniversary of the September 11th attacks. September 11th, 2001 was a bright, crisp morning in many regions of the United States. This was shattered when the nation was attacked by terrorists. At around 8:45 Eastern Time, American Airlines Flight 11 flew into the North Tower of the World Trade Centers. At first, many believed the event to be an accident. Simple pilot error. As journalists and everyday people continued filming, snapping photos, and watching the skies, another plane, United Airlines Flight 175, flew into the South Tower around 9 o'clock. American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon around 9:30. The brave men and women on Flight 93 refused to let their plane be used to hurt America. They retook the plane, crashing it into a field near Shanksville, PA, preventing it from reaching its intended target, Washington, D.C. Many sayings are associated with the September 11th atrocities, such as, "We will never forget." It is also known as the day the United States once again became united, and the day the world changed. It is true that Americans banded together to help each other through the horrible events and aftermath of that day.
Sharon native Rebecca Kabori lost her life in the World Trade Center attacks. She was working on the 97th floor of the North Tower when the plane struck. Kabori's memory is honored at Buell Park in Sharon with a small garden planted on a hillside. Her father still lives in the area and says that while he was there to hear of bin Laden's death, it still doesn't change anything. The crime was committed and his daughter is never coming back. On the day of 9/11, 10 years ago, I still remember it. Being from the Midwest, it was really weird, for me, because I didn't understand why we cared so much about something that was, hundreds and hundreds of miles away until I got to church that evening after my parents pulled me out of school.
I was also in class, and I didn't really think much of it. A mother came in and picked up her children, and the teacher let them go. Like I said, I didn't really know what to think. I didn't know what was going on until I went to my father's office after school, like I normally did. And I saw it on the news, and I realized something was wrong, but I was too young to really understand just how serious that the event was.
Most freshmen here at Westminster were only 8 years old when the Twin Towers were hit. Here's what they have to say about what they remember about the historic event.
What I remember is being in my third grade classroom, and I had to take the attendance down to the office that day. And as I was walking by another classroom, I saw a plane fly into a building. And not thinking much of it at the time, I went back to my classroom and told my other classmates that they were watching a movie in the other room, because that's what I thought was going on. And it wasn't until later that I found out that that just wasn't the case. The teachers and principals weren't allowed to say anything. Our teacher was just crying the whole time, and no one knew why. And we weren't allowed to go outside for recess, and no one knew why. And no one would tell us. They just said we're not allowed.
Everyone was in school, and then everyone got taken out. And then we went on the bus, and my brother rushed me. He was like, "We have to go." And no one's going to attack Twinsburg, Ohio. But we had to go.
I was in my third grade classroom at Our Lady of Fatima Catholic School. My teachers had informed us that there was a terroristic attack on the United States, and they told us that we should go down to the office and get a hold of our parents as soon as we could and talk to them and see what they wanted us to do.
On September 11th, 2001, I was in the third grade, and I was in class, and the teacher got pulled out of the classroom, and it seemed kind of weird because it happened really fast. And then later in the day, they told us we were not allowed to go outside for recess because they were doing construction on the playground. But that seemed really fishy because we had never heard of this before, and we never had seen construction after that. I had a very narrow understanding of the world, and I didn't quite understand the impact that 9/11 had and what it meant. My parents didn't decide to tell me. I found out by hearing the TV from another room at a friend's house.
As an 8-year-old, I was pretty indifferent on the whole situation. I had no idea what was going on, so I just kind of disregarded it.
Who was the first person to inform you on what was happening?
Well, informally, some of the older kids were running down the hallways telling us that we were being bombed and that we were all going to die. But formally, we had an assembly, like an emergency assembly, and our principal told us that just some stuff was going on and that we were going to be okay.
I remember I was in the 4th grade, and the teacher from across the room, our teacher, she came running across, knocked on the door, and she told our math teacher to turn on the TV. And he turned on the TV, and she pulled him out, and she was telling him in the hallway, she was telling him everything that happened. And he came back in, and he told us everything that happened, and he asked if we had any questions, and actually, we got to witness the second plane come in and hit the building.
When it happened, I was at school. I remember it mainly because the lights were turned out like all of a sudden in the middle of science class, and on the PA somebody came over and says, "Teachers, turn your TV's channel for the news." So Mrs. Morrison turned on the TV, and you saw the tower and one of the smokes coming out of the first tower. At that time, I really didn't know exactly what was going on, but I kept noticing that all of my friends kept getting pulled out. After the teacher finally, told us what was going on, I really did feel really scared because of the attacks.
I didn't really grasp the concept of what a terrorist was, and I didn't really think that someone really could do that.
And do you remember what the people around you feel, maybe your fellow students or the teacher at the time?
Our teacher was really just in shock, and most of us were too young to really know what was going on.
I remember first hearing about stuff when I was at lunch, but I remember I found out exactly when I went home from school that day because, again, like I said, I was confused, so I asked my family about it, and my aunt told me just exactly, like in layman's terms, what was going on so that, as a 4th grader, I could understand it. So I remember I was like sitting in my living room talking to my aunt, and that's where I kind of actually figured out what was going on, that it wasn't in my hometown, that it was actually in New York.
I couldn't even imagine if your parent or your child or a close friend, anyone was taken from you that day. That must have been so horrific, and you wouldn't know if they were okay or in a hospital, and I couldn't even fathom what would go through my mind at the time.
The weekend was filled with many ways to honor the story of United Airlines Flight 93. The dedication of the memorial on Saturday, September 10th, and the 10-year anniversary commemoration on Sunday were the focal points of the weekend. For those wanting to honor the memory of those aboard Flight 93, it is right in our own backyard, only 2.5 hours away in Shanksville. Coming up on the County Line, details on the murder case of Jordan Brown.
Also, we have a preview of this year's New Wilmington Fireman's Auction.
Recently, the controversial Jordan Brown trial faced major changes when the case moved to juvenile court last month. Brown faced prosecution in adult court for shooting and killing his father's pregnant fiancée, Kenzie Hook. At 11 years old, he was charged in accordance with PA state laws for murder cases and brought up in 2 counts of homicide over Hook and her unborn child. Brown's lawyers moved the trial to juvenile court so he could be in a forum suitable to his own age. He will stay in a detention center until his next court appearance and remain under jurisdiction until he's 21.
Students will not return to East Lawrence Elementary for this coming year. That is the ruling voted on by Wilmington Schools Board of Directors. The board reached the conclusion with a vote of 5-4 in favor of closing the school. Students from East Lawrence are now attending New Wilmington Elementary.
The transfer of the asset for the racetrack and casino project between Centaur and American Harness Tracks took place earlier this month. This puts American Harness Track fully in charge. They had to have finances and the project manager in place by September 12th.
As fall approaches and school begins, the county fair marks the last fun-filled week of summer. The 2011 Lawrence County Fair took place from August 15th through the 20th. This year, fairgoers could watch a miniature toy train chug along the tracks or head to the grandstands for the annual tractor pull. There was also spinny rides, cotton candy, and the livestock auctions. Visitors could walk through the 4-H Club's exhibit displaying their best vegetables. And who could forget the ice-cold lemonade? The Lawrence County Fair will always be a summer family tradition.
Every July, the Mercer County Antique Power Association holds their Antique Power Show in Stoneboro Fairgrounds. Located in the northeastern part of Mercer County in Lake Township, the show exhibits the farming of yesteryear. Collectors and enthusiasts from all around gather to the fairgrounds to see many classic tractors and machinery. The County Line's Joe Ligo traveled to the show and took part in the fun.
I'm here at the Stoneboro Fairgrounds for the annual Antique Power Show, where collectors bring in tractors and farm equipment of every shape, size, and color.
From rows of John Deeres to shiny red Farmalls and everything in between, people come to the Power Show to show off their antique equipment, take a look at their neighbors, and maybe even prove their might in the tractor pool. I spoke to the Antique Power Association president to learn more about the show.
How'd you folks get started, the association?
Well, there was a group of individuals got together and they decided that the history of the antique tractors and farming and engines was disappearing, so to preserve that information and provide it for future generations, they decided to start an antique power show.
He wouldn't be president if he didn't have a few tractors of his own.
I have some antique John Deeres and also some antique Ford tractors.
It's good to hear you have at least one Ford.
Well, I have about 20 Fords.
Wow.
Between 8N, 9N, and 2Ns.
That's a lot of tractors for one guy.
Yeah.
All of the collectors are very passionate about what they bring to the show.
A lot of the old equipment that you see around here is what I had to use on the family farm when I was growing up, so it brings back a lot of nice fond memories.
He told me the tractor sat in his garage for 5 years before he restored it.
I became a member up here to help out with the thrasher and the baler, and I didn't have anything to show, so it was time to get it out of the garage and put her into show condition.
For many of the folks at the show, farming is a family tradition.
Steel 20, my uncle bought that brand new in 1950. And he had it ever since, and he died 4 or 5 years ago. And I got it off my cousin, inherited it. Second I was born last winter. And put a new tire on it, cleaned it off, an inch of bird manure on it, drove it home.
Aside from tractors, the show has many unique vendors as well.
And what exactly do you sell here?
We sell anything that's a reproduction of original advertising. We have arrows, signs, we have license plates, we have just a regular rectangular sign, we have round signs, oil signs, car signs, I Love Lucy signs.
Just anything that was original advertising that now they reproduce for the reproduction so that you can get it at a more reasonable price.
Sure. Now, what's the name of your business?
It's Here's Your Signs.
As fun as the signs were, I found something that really caught my eye.
Now, how did you get into all of the scale models and tractor toys?
Well, I collected them when I was a kid, played with them, and met up with my wife there, and she also collected some of them. And when we got married, we decided, well, we got to do something to finance my addiction, mainly. So we started selling, and it's grown into this.
I couldn't help but take just one home with me.
Having walked around in the hot sun all afternoon, it's now time for my favorite part of the day. Sitting back with a lemon shake, a slice of pie, and watching the tractor pulls.
I'm Joe Ligo for the County Line.
Each year, the New Wilmington's Volunteer Firemen's Auction raises thousands of dollars for their department. It is a local autumn tradition dating back 56 years. Every year, the Brothers of Westminster's Alpha Sigma Phi fraternity helps out at the event. The auction is located at the New Wilmington Auction on State Route 158. The date for this year's auction is September 24th. The event begins with the flea market at 9 a.m., followed by the auction at 5. Auction and flea market items may be dropped off at the auction site from 6 to 8 p.m. on Tuesdays. Food and drinks will be available at the event. An HD TV, an Amish-made hutch, and a hindquarter of beef will be auctioned off.
Coming up on the County Line, we have all the sports highlights on Titantown Sports.
Global warming is a problem.
Sound the alarm!
We think it's an important thing to save energy, to protect the environment, to protect the future.
Every who in Whoville makes a difference. We need everyone!
Together.
Together?
Together. We can all make a difference.
Save energy with Energy Star, and then you can be
Part of the solution.
Go to EnergyStar.gov/kids to see what else you can do.
Hi, welcome to Titantown Sports. I'm Adam Carswell. Some of the 323 cross-country runners in the Fisher Invitational hosted by Westminster College back at the beginning of this month ended up in the hospital. Emergency crews rushed 4 runners to the Jameson Hospital. The Jameson Hospital in Newcastle after they were overcome by heat. Some collapsed. They were treated and released in the afternoon. 3 others were treated on campus for heat-related symptoms. None of these runners were from Westminster. The temperature in the Wilmington area spiked into the upper 90s by late morning. The National Weather Service also issued a heat warning for Lawrence and Mercer counties on that day because of conditions. In spite of the scorching sun and high humidity, the competition continued for both men and women representing 31 teams and 18 colleges. Both the Titan men's and women's teams placed 8th in their respective races, which included 13 scored men's teams and 16 scored women's teams. Gannon won the men's team standings with 95 points. Westminster's men posted 199. Clarion captured the women's standings with 71 points, and Westminster logged 189. One of Westminster's top coaches now has a top job. The NCAA has appointed Titan swimming coach Rob Clamett chairman of the Division III Rules Committee. Clamett had served on the committee for 2 years after being elected by his peers. He will be responsible for helping coaches interpret the rule book. He will also help set qualifying standards for the national meet. The Wilmington area high school football squad is eager to recapture the Division III championship this season, as well as have another shot at a state title. But first, they must complete the regular season with a major upset in the non-conference season opener against Slippery Rock. Some think the Hounds can repeat history. Wilmington destroyed the Slippery Rock Rockets in that first game, 36-14. Wilmington head coach Terry Varelli is also hoping for a strong season The coach says that they have lots of returning players from last year. They're all experienced, so he says they should be prepared to step up and do some great things this fall.
They got a lot of that game experience that we talk about that you can't tell them about it and prepare them. You actually have to be out there. So to be honest with you, I expect, to have a good season. There are certain spots, the kids come back. There's always, every year there's surprises and there's disappointments. We expected this kid to be ready to go and he isn't. And we didn't expect this kid to help us this year. And man, he come to play. So there's certain spots there. The quarterback is a key spot. And, what notch are they going to step it up is really going to determine how well your team does. I mean, that's just the key.
Catch the highlights from the Wilmington Greyhounds regular season on our website, WCN247.com. We're celebrating our 5th year of bringing you the Hounds Roundup. Each week, Ethan Yeager and his crew head to the home games to shoot highlights. That's the Greyhound Roundup online at WCN247.com. And that is your Titantown Sports. I'll be back here next week. Now, for more County Line.
Returning students and faculty welcomed the class of 2015 during Fresh Start orientation. First years were greeted by football players and Fresh Start leaders while moving in. After opening convocation, students participated in activities throughout orientation. First years have settled into Westminster life.
With the start of a new year, students should take notice of the Patterson Hall renovation project. Students with courses in the math and science departments are having to find alternative ways of getting to class. Extra time may be needed to walk to class due to construction.
Westminster students now have 3 different locations to eat on campus. Along with the Tub, the Duff and the Titan Club are now open for summer renovations. Cameras were on the scene when the ribbon ceremony took place. Reverend Jim Moore was there to bless the building. The Titan Club is a new casual dining restaurant with TV screens and the World of Wings Cafe, also known as the Wow. Here's the President Dorman had to say about the new facilities.
Use it. We put these 2 new restaurants in here because it's a terrific addition to the school, and I hope that everybody uses it.
Along with aesthetic changes, dining hours are now different. Duff is open during lunchtime and dinner. The Tub is now open only until 8:30 p.m., Wow opens at 11 a.m. The Tub is no longer open late. Students wishing to munch on a late-night snack can eat at the Wow.
Learn more about the Meeting House in Valant at 6 p.m. September 16th. See the simplistic lifestyle and courting of the Old Order Amish of Lawrence County. The traditional wedding feast is a hearty, home-cooked meal, authentically prepared and served for the gathering. Seating is limited, reservations and payment is required.
Pet Festival and Dog Walk at Cascade Park is September 17th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Entertainment will be all day. Bring your dogs on leashes for the day. The event is sponsored by Promises for Pets.
Come enjoy an evening with Colin Mockery and Brad Sherwood September 24th. Westminster's Celebrity Series is showcasing these comedians from the popular improv television show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Tickets are now on sale at the box office. That does it for this edition of the County Line.
Be sure to check out WCN247.com for all your campus and community updates.
Be sure to tune in every week as we bring you the latest news and sports from around the area.
Good night.
Good night.